In this video, we will learn how to use cookies with Node.js. So what is a cookie? Cookies are small blocks of data created by a web server and placed by the user's web browser when the user accesses a website. So suppose I go to gmail.com or I go to facebook.com. So the Gmail server will send a small block of data known as a cookie, which will be placed by my browser when I visit gmail.com. So that is a cookie. More than one cookie can be placed, and we will learn how multiple cookies are placed. And one very important property of cookies are that cookies persist after the browser is closed. So what does this mean? It means that when I stop browsing that site or even after I close that browser, the cookie will persist on my local device. So whether it's a mobile, it's a tablet, it's a laptop, it's a desktop, the cookie will persist. Also, along with each request, the browser sends all the cookies of that website to the web server. So all the relevant cookies, the browser will send to the web server. So when I go to gmail.com again, all the cookies pertaining to gmail.com will be sent by the browser to Gmail. Similarly, when I revisit facebook.com, the cookies pertaining to facebook.com will be sent by the browser to the web server. So what is the common purpose of a cookie and why do we use it? Cookies are commonly used to authenticate that a user is logged in and to identify the account used to log in. So if we go back to our Gmail example, a cookie has been placed on my local device. The next time when I go to gmail.com, it will attach that cookie and send it to the web server, and the web server will now be able to figure out, okay, it is me who has logged in. So commonly used to authenticate it. Without the cookie, users would need to authenticate or log in every session. So if that cookie was not there, how would Gmail know that I had visited that and had logged in earlier? So I would need to log in every time. So this is a very commonly used case of cookies. They are also used to store more data on the user's device and also used to track and identify non-logged in users. So sometimes you have not logged in into a website, but still it can track you because it can place a cookie on your local device. So how do we use cookies with Node.js? So Node.js is our backend server. So how does the web server, which is the Node server in this case, handle cookies? So for that, we will install a Node.js module for cookies, which is Cookie-parser. So the standard way to install it, npm install Cookie-parser. So go ahead and install it. And once you have installed it, let's proceed. So let's create a simple Node server wherein we do get/viewpage. So that's the URL. And it gets the cookie name. And if it does not find it, it sends a cookie called name with the value as guessed. So once we start doing it, we'll get to understand all this terminology that has been discussed here. So let's go back to our VS Code and start doing it. So here in my VS Code, I have a standard boilerplate code for Express. And now let us start writing the code for this exercise. So the first thing we will do is we will need to do a require. So we can just say const cookie parser is equal to require cookie parser. So we had installed the module cookie parser. So we will now use a require, and we will just say app.use cookie parser. So once we have done that, our cookies can be used. Now let's define our app.get. What was the path? /viewpage function request comma response. Now what do we need to do here? The first thing we need to do here is get the cookie. So how can we get the cookie? Let name is equal to request dot cookies dot name. So we had assumed that the cookie would be called name. So from the cookies that I received, so with each request I would receive cookies from the browser. So I am checking if I get a cookie name. Next, what do we need to do? If name. So if name is truthy, then we would know that this cookie has been received. So before that, I can also say console.log name. Let me do that. So what do we want to do? So if not name means I did not receive the cookie, then what should we do? We should send a cookie response dot cookie. We need to give it what's the name of this cookie, and its value we wanted was a guest. So that's the cookie. Cookie is like a name value pair, so we have given it a name and a value, and we can just send a response dot send cookie set. Else what can we do? We can just send a response dot send cookie received for name, and we put the name. So we have defined a simple cookie here. Let's go ahead and run this code. And how do we test it? We will test it in Postman. So in Postman, let's create a request localhost 21410. And what is it? It is view page. So what have we gotten here? Cookie set. Now you can see cookies here. If I go to cookies, I get name. So there is a cookie. And how else can I see it? Here in the body, we get a cookie. The name of the cookie is name and its value is guest. If I call it again, then what does it give me? Cookie received for name guest, because this time the cookie was sent. So I got the cookie, and the response is cookie received for name guest, and the cookie remains the same. We can also check in our browser, in our Node server. So the first time name was undefined. The second time we got the name as guest, the value for name as guest. So what we have done here is we have sent a cookie if we did not receive it. And if we received it, we have just sent a response that cookie received for the following name. Next, what do we want to do? Post/view page sends a body with the name of the user and sends a cookie name with the provided value. So we will define a post/view page with the body having name and the name of the user, and we will send a cookie with that specified value. Let's do that. So we will say app.post view page function request comma response. Let name is equal to request dot body. So from the body we will get the name. Once we have gotten the name, what do we want to set? We want to set the cookie. So we can just set response dot cookie name, and what is the value we want to give it? We want to give it this value, and we can just send the response dot send cookie set with name equal to $name. So we have now set the name. Let's go ahead and test it. Now let's go back to our Postman. So we had the cookies. Let me first clear this cookie. So there are no cookies now. And let me create a post. Where do we want to send the post? This is the URL. So let me just copy it. What is the body? It's a JSON. Let's say name is equal to George. And we want to send it. So let me send it. First, let's test cookies. There are no cookies here. Let me send it. And we get cookie set with name is equal to George. Let me test here in cookies and we get name as George. Now if we go back to our get and I send this get request again. So let me go back to the body here and send it. So cookie received for name George. So that's what we are doing. And in the cookies, I can click on the cookie and we can see the name equal to George. So it has this name value pair, name equal to George. So we have now set this cookie based on what the user sent us, the name that the user sent us. Next, what do we want to do? Suppose the server wants to delete this cookie. So how should it do it? So delete / view page deletes the cookie name. So let's go back and define app.delete / view page function request comma response. So now what do we do here? Response dot clear cookie, and we gave the name of the cookie, which is name. And let me also send a response cookie deleted. So we are deleting the cookie. When we do a clear cookie, this cookie, once the response is received by the browser, it will delete that cookie. Let's test it out. So in our Postman, let's first check our cookies. We have this cookie with name. Let's now create another request, which is a delete request. Now let me send it. And what do we get? Cookie is deleted. And now if we go to cookies, obviously there is no cookie. So the cookie has now been deleted. If I now go back to get and now send a get, what should I get? I should get cookie set and the name will be guessed because the cookie was deleted. So this is how we have cleared the cookie from the client side if we want to do it. And we can see that in Postman, the cookie has been deleted. Next, what do we want to do? In get / view page, add another cookie counter whose value gets updated whenever the user calls this API. If the cookie is not set, initialize the counter to 1. So if the cookie was set, whatever counter value it had, we are incrementing it. So in some sense, we are keeping a count of how many times the view page has been called with this cookie. And if the cookie was not set, we will initialize the counter to 1. So here we are also creating multiple cookies. So let's see how do we do that. So in our get, we will also need to get our counter. Get counter is equal to request dot cookies dot counter. So if not name, we will set this cookie name as guest. And what else do we need to do? We need to set the cookie counter with the value 1. Else what do we need to do? Response dot cookie. Which cookie do we need to update? Counter. And what will its value be? Plus counter plus 1. Why am I doing plus counter? To convert it into a number and then incrementing it by 1. And we can say cookie received for name this and counter is counter. So this is the cookie we received and we have sent that back as a response. What else do we want to do? Now when we are setting it in the post, we need to also set the response.cookie counter and give it the value 1. And when we are deleting it, also we need to clear both the cookies. So we can just say counter. Let's test this now. So in our Postman, let me go to cookies and let me clear the cookie. So there are no cookies now. First, let's go to get. So cookie has been set. Now if you can see there are two cookies set, name as guest and counter as 1. If you go here and also check, so we have counter 1 and name equal to guest. Now if I get this again, what should it do? It should increment counter, which is what we are saying here. And in the body, cookie received for name guest and counter colon 1. If I send it again, we can see that the counters are being refreshed. Now if we go to post and send this post, what will it do? It will reset the name to George and the counter to 1. So let's send that. So counter has become 1, name has become George. And if you go to the cookies, we can see those are our two cookies and that's what we are seeing. If we go back to our get now, the name should become George and the counter is 2 and the body says that. So this is working fine. Now let's go to our delete and the cookie has been deleted. And have both the cookies been deleted? Yes. So both the cookies have been deleted. So this is how we can define multiple cookies, and we could have defined even more cookies if we wanted. Cookies also have a concept called expiration time, the time after they get expired, which means this is the time after which the cookie is deleted by the browser. So we can set a time after which the cookie automatically gets deleted by the browser. So suppose I want to store your details for a few days or say 30 minutes or say a week, and after that it just gets deleted. So at times you also get it in Gmail that you need to re-log in. So at times this is the model that has been done. So what does it say? Set an expiration time in the cookie to expire after 150,000 milliseconds. So we specify this time in milliseconds. A millisecond is 10 to the power minus 3. So this means 150 seconds after 150 seconds, which is 2.5 minutes, the cookie will expire. So how should we set the time? So where we are setting the cookie, we can just set the time maxAge and we can set the value. So this is the time in milliseconds. So now this cookie has a max time or an expiration time of 150,000 milliseconds. Same for this. Here we do not do it. Right now we are not doing it. So the counter, once the first time we are setting the cookie, we set the max age, not when we are editing it. Similarly, in our post, let's put the max age. So let me copy that. So now we have set the max age. Let's go ahead and test it. Let's go to our cookies. There are no cookies. So let me do a get. So cookie has been set. Let's go to our cookie name. So we can say name is this and it gives us an expiration time. So which is 150,000 milliseconds from now. Similarly, counter, counter is equal to 1. Why did we not get an expiration time for it? Let's go back and check it. So the reason being, we made an error here. So we did not get it. Now let's correct it. Let's run it again. Let me delete both the cookies. And now if I get it and check the cookies, so we get the expiration time for the counter and the expiration time for the name. Same when we post it, we get the same thing here. Again, there is an error here seemingly. Let's check it. It's the same error. So this should work fine. Let's test one more thing. Suppose I make this as 10 seconds. So what will happen? So the expiration time is 10 seconds. So let's run this. Let me delete both the cookies. And let's run a post with, say, instead of George, let me change the name to, say, James. So now we have 2 cookies. And let's wait for a while and then go back and check it. So we still have the 2 cookies. And now you can see both these cookies, because 10 seconds were over, have been deleted. So in this case, Postman or whichever client we are using on the client's device, the user's device, the cookies get deleted after that time. Now if I run a get again, it will set a cookie. If I send it, you can see the counter is increasing. And now if I wait for a while and send it again, what would have happened? The cookies would have gotten deleted. And now if I send it, what do I get? It becomes 1 again, because the cookies got deleted. So how did they get deleted? Because we set an expiration time, and in this case we set it as 10 seconds. So they got deleted. Let's change it back to what we were aiming to do, so that they don't get deleted that fast. So I would strongly recommend, make this change, run it for, say, 10 seconds, see if the cookies getting deleted. It just helps us build more understanding. Another concept in cookies is signed cookies. So what are signed cookies? Signed cookies help detect if the user modified the cookie. So from the server, we sign these cookies and send it, and this helps us detect if any change was made by the user. So this helps us ensure the security of the cookie, and that whatever the server had sent has not been modified by the user. So what do we want to do? Modify the server to make the cookies as signed. So in our VS Code, what we will do here is that for a signed cookie, we will provide it a key. Let's say, let me call it A, B, C, D, E, F, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 1. Any string I can provide. Next, what do we want to do? We want to use signed cookies. So instead of using request.cookies to get them, we will use request.signedCookies. So wherever we were getting them using cookies, we will now get them through signed cookies. And while sending the cookie, we will give signed is true. So if we do that, then these cookies become signed. So whenever we are setting the cookie, we will need to do that signed is true. Same here. And this would make it a signed cookie. Let's go and test it. So there are no cookies. Let's go to get and let me send a get request. Now you can see we have received two cookies and the values seem to be slightly different. Let's go and check it. Name. You can see the name is guest and there is something more here. So this is the signature. This is the signed cookie that we have gotten, which will help once it goes back for the server to figure out and handle it. Let me send it again so that we can see that we cookie received for name guest and counter 1. So the server was able to figure out the name guest and the server was able to figure out the correct counter value and do that. Same thing in our post. Let's send it now and let's go to our cookies. So it has James and some signature or some other text associated with it. And if I go to counter, the same thing is appearing here. So this is a signed cookie. If we want to delete them, just like we deleted the unsigned cookies, the normal cookies, these cookies will also get deleted. So this is how we use signed cookies with Node.js. Now that we have gotten our basic understanding of cookies, let's do a simple exercise which will help make these concepts much clearer. So what does the exercise say? Create a node server which sets a cookie user data. So user data is the name of the cookie and this cookie has two fields. So the value of a cookie user data can be a JSON and this JSON will have two fields, user and pages. User is the name of the user or guest and pages is an array with the list of all the pages visited by the user along with date. So pages is an array and each element of the array is the URL and the date. The cookie has an expiration time of 30,000 milliseconds, which is reset every time the user makes a reset. So we reset the time to 30,000 milliseconds every time we change the cookie. The REST APIs are get/mobiles, gives the list of mobiles. If no cookie is set, it sets a cookie with the user as guest and also adds this URL to pages. Get/laptops gives the list of laptops and similar to mobiles, if no cookie is set, it sets a cookie with the user as guest and also adds the URL to pages. Let's first implement these two APIs and then we will implement the other parts of this exercise. So we have this file data.js which provides us the data, an array of users, mobiles, laptops, offers, and it exports all these fields. So we will use that in our server cookies. So here is the same standard boilerplate code and we have used require on the cookie parser and we have app.use cookie parser with a string to sign the cookies. Also we need to do let laptops comma mobiles equal to require data.js. So we have gotten those values which we will send in these requests. So now let's define our app.get URL/mobiles function request comma response. Now what's the first thing? Let's get the cookie. Let user data is equal to request dot signed cookies dot user data. If not user data, if user data is not defined, then what can we say? Then we can define user data as user data is equal to user is guest and say pages is an empty array. So now we have a user data. Now what all do we need to do? In our pages we need to add this URL, so we can just say user data dot pages dot push URL is slash mobiles, and date is say date dot now. So we have provided the value of the date. So we have pushed it into this array. If we found that, then this would go back as another entry in that array. Once we have done this, then what do we need next? We need to now send the cookie and the response. So response dot signed cookies user data comma user data comma, what are parameters? Max age, what did we give the max age as? 30,000 milliseconds, and signed is true. And what is our response? Response dot send mobiles. So we are sending the list of the mobiles. Also, let me do here is a console dot log cookie is, or let's call it say user data is, and let's print its value so that we can see it. Let's restart the server and let's go back to our Postman. So let's create a get request slash mobiles. Let me send that, and we get an error here. Signed cookies is not a function. So what is the error? It should have been cookie here. So that's the error we made. Let's run it again. Let's go back to Node and send it. And we have received the list of mobiles, the array of mobiles as the response. We have also received a cookie. It's a signed cookie. So we can see it has a user data where user has the value guessed, and there is a date which it has, and it has an expiration. Let's send it again. So now if I go and check the value, so the value seems to have something more has been added to it. Let's go and test it here. So we get user data was initially undefined and now it's an object. So if we want to display it properly, we could have used json.stringify. Let me do that. Let's run it again. And now when I send it, let's test it. So it's undefined. Why did it get undefined? Because in 30 seconds, that was the time, it got deleted. Let's send it again. And now what do we get here? User data is, and the pages is slash mobiles, and it gives us a timestamp. If I send another request, and we continue to get it. So URL now pages has 2 elements and so on. So what we wanted to do, we have done with slash mobiles. We want to do a similar thing with slash laptops. So let me copy this. So this will be slash laptops. And in the URL, we will add slash laptops and we will send laptops. That was the, yeah. So let's save it and restart the server. Now, if we go back and test it, we get an undefined. Now let me send it again. We get a slash mobiles. Now instead of mobiles, if I call it with say laptops, so we have gotten the list of laptops and the cookie has slash mobile slash mobile slash mobile slash mobile slash laptops. So that's how our page is showing it. So this can help us maintain the history of the user on the browser. So the cookie helps us maintain that. Next, what do we want to do? We have a post/login. So this receives the name and password in the body. And if they match, we had the array of users. So we will match the name and password. If they match, it sets the cookie. Now the cookie will have the name that was given here. Otherwise, a 401 unauthorized error because there was an error in login. Similarly, we want to define a get/logout which deletes the cookie if the user is not guest. So for a logged in user, it will delete the cookie. If the user is a guest, it will not delete it. So let's implement these two. So first, let's implement app.post/login function request comma response. Let name comma password is equal to request.body. So let's destructure them from the body. So we get the name and the password. Next, we need to find it from the data.js, the data. So we have name and password and it's exported as users. So let's also get users. So let me say let user equal to users dot find u such that u dot name is equal to name and u dot password is equal to password. Once we have found a user, if not user. So if user is not truthy, it is falsy, means we will send response dot status 401 dot send login failed. Else, what do we want to send? Response dot cookie. Now what do we want to send in the cookie? We will construct the name of the cookie is user data. It will have only user is name. Pages will be an empty array. Why are we putting pages here? Because earlier we had not checked whether pages was an empty array or not. We could have done it there also, and here also we could have done it. So either ways we could have handled it. And what do we want to do? What are the values here? Max age is 30,000 and signed is true. And we want to send response dot send login success. So this is our post. Let's go ahead and test it. So let's look at some test values. So George is George and Sarah is Sarah. So just changes that. So let's test it with these values. So let me restart the server. So we need to send a post to /login. It's a post request. What does the body have? It's a JSON. Name is Sarah. Password is Sarah. So that's a JSON. Let's send it. And we get a login success. And if we go and check the cookies, we get a cookie user data. And that has happened. If I go to my get and now get the details of the laptops, we get them. And here we can get that the user data, what was the cookie there? User Sarah, pages is colon. If I send it again, we get the right. So this has happened. Let's call it now with say value as a Sarah1. So this should, the login has failed. In this case, but remember the cookie has already been set. So the cookie has not been deleted. So we should ideally have deleted that cookie, which is the next part that we need to implement. So next we want to do is app.get slash logout function request comma response. And what do we want to do here? We just want to delete cookies. So response clear cookie, and which cookie do we want to clear? User data. So we have cleared the cookie and we can just send a response.send cookies cleared. So this is our logout. Let's implement it again, test it again. So let me restart the server. So now let's first log in with, say, George, and let's see if there are any cookies. There are no cookies. Let me send it, and we get a 401 authorized because it was the login failed. Let me provide the correct password. And we get the cookies. Once we get the cookies, let me go to a get request and send it, and we get that also. Let me send it again. And now if I go to cookies, so we have the user data cookie. So let's now delete the cookie. So this is get slash logout, and we get cookies are cleared. And if I go to cookies, there are no cookies. So at logout, we have cleared the cookie. Next, what do we want to do? Get slash cookie data sends the data received in the cookie as a response. So we have just added this method so that we can read the cookie in the Postman, whatever cookie we had received. And then we have get slash users. If the role of the user in the cookie is admin, it sends the names of all the users. Otherwise, a 403 forbidden error. And if the user is guessed or no cookie is found, send a 401 unauthorized error. So these are the two we need to implement. Let's go ahead and do it. So the first is app.get slash cookie data function request comma response. Let's say let user data is equal to request dot signed cookies dot user data. And what do we send? Response dot send user data. Let's go ahead and test this. So let's first log in with, say, George. Then let's visit laptops twice. And now let's create a get cookie data. So we get user, pages is, and we have gotten fine. If I add another page and now get it, you can see we have gotten 3. And now if I do a logout, then we don't get a cookie. So this is a good way to just view that data, because in signed cookies and all that, it's not an easy way to view it. So you can also implement this, just helps you get a better sense. Next, what do we want to implement is app.get slash users. So slash users, if the role of the user in the cookie is admin, then we send the names of the users, otherwise a 403 forbidden. And if the user is guessed or no cookie, then 401 unauthorized, which means nobody has logged in. Function request comma response. So let's get the user data from the cookie. Request dot signed cookies dot user data. Let user comma page is equal to user data. So let's destructure it, or we could have just done it here itself, but let's do it here. So now what do we want to do? If not user, if not user data, if user data is falsy or user is equal to guest. If these two conditions are true, then what should we send? We should just send a response dot send 401 dot status 401 dot send no access. Please log in first. So it means you're not logged in. Else what do we want to do? We will need to find out the role. So what is the role? So here for each user we have a role. So let's find out the role. Let user is equal to users dot find u such that u dot name is equal to user. Once we get the name, once we get the user, then what do we need to do? So here the user field is being used twice, so we should just make it say u1. If u1 dot role is equal to admin. So if the role is admin, then what do we need to send? We will get all the names of the users. So we can just create a simple map. Names is equal to users dot map. U goes to u dot name. And we can send response dot send names. Else what do we do? Response dot send 403 dot status 403 dot forbidden, which means you do not have access to view it, only an admin has access to view it. So this is what it should do. Let's go ahead and test it. So right now, who is our user? There should be none, so there should be guest. So now when we get that users, what should we get? We got an internal server error. Why did we get an internal server error? Request is not defined. This is the error. Good. Let's test it again. Let's clear all the cookies. So again, let's do a get. So we have a guest user, and now if I get users, no access, I get a 401 on unauthorized. Please log in first. Let's just check which role has admin. So John is admin, Sarah and George are users. So let's log in with George. So we have logged in with George. Now if I go and get users, what do I get? Forbidden. I get a 403 forbidden. So that's the user. So let me now delete the cookies. And now let's log in with, say, John. So John and John. So now let's get the user. So it's a John, and now if I send it, we still get a forbidden. Why did we get a forbidden? Let's test it. So the role here was admin. It's a small a, so we need to correct it. Let's restart the server and test it again. Cookies. So there is no cookie. Let's first log in John. So John has been logged in. Next, what do we want to do? Let's get the user. So that's John. Now let's get the users, and it gives an error, reference error. Let's test it. Name is not defined at 73. So this should have been names. We have made a lot of errors. So just be careful while writing your code so that you don't make these kinds of errors. And what we are also getting is how do we debug these errors. Let's restart our server. Cookies, there are none. Let's post again. So we have logged in with John. Let's get the user. This is fine. And now let's send it. And finally, we get the names of the users: John, Sarah, and George. So this is how this works. So what did we do here? We got the cookies, and based on what values were there in the cookies, we have been able to do all these exercises. So this gives us a fairly good idea of cookies and how they work, and just write these codes and these concepts will be fairly clear to you.